Shavua Tov, a gute Woche, and welcome to our program, Mitzvah Shabbos Kodesh of Parshas Chayei, and it's the Shabbos of the Kinus HaShluchim. We are reminded of the Rebbe's Farbrengen of Shabbos Parshas Chayei, Tovshin Nun Beis. And needless to say, Tovshin Nun Beis is a very sensitive year. It was the last time that we heard and saw the Rebbe at the Farbrengen, Shabbos Parshas Chayei, soon to start again, but it's a very sensitive year. And in that year, Tovshin Nun Beis, the Rebbe spoke extensively about the Kinus HaShluchim, which was that Shabbos, like the same Kviyas, like it's this year, Shabbos Parshas Chayei, the Shabbos of Kinus HaShluchim, Oyelomi. And the Rebbe spoke about the connection between Shabbos Parshas Chayei and the Kinus HaShluchim. And in as much as we mentioned this from time to time, there is another dimension which we did not speak about before, which we are going to speak about today. We will return to that in a moment, and to the connection that the Rebbe makes between Parshas Chayei and Kinus HaShluchim and the Shlichus of every Jew. But first, our customary story. Last week passed away a Jew, a wonderful Jew, who was zeicher to be in the Rebbe's house, who was zeicher to eat at the Rebbe's table. Reb Sholom Rebbe Shmuel Butman in Gansbourg. Allem and so lange Jahre. There was a long friendship between us, a friendship that started because of the Rebbe himself. But that's a story for another day. What I want to tell you is one of the stories that Reb Sholom Bell told me. He was taking care of the Rebbe and the Rebbetzin in the Rebbe's house. And this seems to be the first year, Pesach, for the Seder. This is the first Seder that he took care of the Rebbe and the Rebbetzin. He had an elderly father, Rabbi Shmuel Butman in Gansbourg, who lived on Eastern Parkway, and was elderly and needed help. So the Sholom Bell figured like this. He prepared for the Rebbe Seder, everything the Rebbe needed for the Seder. And he put everything on the table in a very organized way. Now he figured the Rebbe is not, his part of the Seder is going to start when he has to serve the fish. But that's after the Rebbe makes Kiddush, and the Rebbe says the Haggadah, and the Rebbe eats matzah, and after that the Rebbe eats morel, and after that the Rebbe eats kelech. So by the time the Rebbe would be up to kelech, and to Shulchan Aruch, he will be back. So meanwhile, he went to his father on Eastern Parkway, and he helped his father, who was elderly and needed his help. When he came back to the Rebbe's house, the Rebbe said to him, a little strongly, "Wo seid ihr gewesen? Mein Mann wartet auf euch. Where were you? My husband is waiting for you for the Seder." Which he didn't think. He thought that he prepared the Seder. He's only going to come when he has to serve the fish, and he himself will do the Seder later. But the Rebbe is waiting for him to do the Seder. So when he told the story, he says, for the moment, he lost himself. The Rebbe is sitting, and the Rebbe is waiting for him to say that, and he drew a blank. What is he going to do? And then he had a thought that Rebbe gave him. He took a Haggadah, and he did exactly what it says on the Haggadah. Yisaded al Shulchonei Sholish Matzis, that he should bring 3 matzahs to the table. The lower one will be the Yisrael, the Olav Halevi, the Olav HaKain. So he did exactly what it says in the Haggadah. Then they said the Haggadah on the right side, he should put the Zreah. So he put the Zreah on the right side, like it says in the Haggadah. Small words. And after on the left side it says you should put the beitzo, you put the beitzo. Tachteim be'emtza ha'model, underneath both, in the middle you put the model. He did that, and the Rebbe is sitting and watching him and waiting. When he finished doing the whole kaila, organizing his kaila, the Rebbe made Kiddush. What we see from this story, maybe many things, but one of the things is from the story that Rebbe wanted him to do the Seder at the Rebbe's table. And inasmuch as he didn't think about it, he think he was going to do the Seder later himself. The Rebbe wanted him to do the Seder at the Rebbe's table. And the Rebbe was waiting for him for the Seder. And waiting until he finished to be misaldat his kaila, and then the Rebbe made Kiddush. Tia nishmosi tzururo b'tzedel achayim, yisholim liofri, v'zichrei boruch, v'yakitzu v'ranen sheikh neofer, v'hu b'seichom, gesundheit und Verehlichkeit, tekef umiyad mamish. Coming back to our parsha, and to the connection between the Kinus HaShaluchim and Parshas Chayesoro, and the Kinus HaShaluchim. The Rebbe started this Sicha, Tovshin Nun Beis, concerning the Kinus HaShaluchim, and he used an expression which I'm not sure was ever used before. And he said, "Darf man zum allermeisten dem Mondem dem Yesed." The first since it's the Kinus of Shaluchim, so we have to mention the foundation. And then he said, "Und alus geben dem Tafkid von de Shluchim." Und alus geben dem Tafkid. Alus geben dem Tafkid in a loose translation means to give out, to present, to state the tafkid, the function of the shluchim in our generation. And I'm not sure that this expression, "Unarus geben dem tafkid," was ever used before. And then the Rebbe talks about the chidush of shlichus. Again, it's Tovshin Nun Beis, a very sensitive year. And the Rebbe spoke not only for the Kinus HaShaluchim of that year, but for the Kinusei HaShaluchim in the future, as this was Nun Beis. And the Rebbe says that Chidush in the Avedas HaShlichus, the Chidush, somebody's going to say the Chidush in Avedas HaShlichus, we know Shlichus, what's the Chidush? So the Rebbe says what the Chidush is. And this especially Bismanu Acharin, this was added in lately. Lekabel pnei Mashiach tzidkeinu begulo amitis v'ashlemo. What is the chidush of shlichus? Says the Rebbe. Chayesoro Nun Beis. Lekabel pnei Mashiach tzidkeinu begulo amitis v'ashlemo. To greet Mashiach. Shlichus is there to do one thing: to prepare the world for Mashiach and to greet Mashiach. In that sicha, you can check inside. The Rebbe talks about the connection of Shlichus to Parshas Chayesoro, with the general question, that if we open up a Chumash and we see the story, although the Chumash doesn't tell stories, but the way it's presented to us, we see that the story of Eliezer is repeated twice. First, it's the story the way it happened, and then Eliezer is repeating the whole story again. Which that in itself is a question. We already know the story, and we know how precious every word in Chumash is. And here there's so many psukim that are repeating the story as it's repeated by Eliezer Eved Avraham. Parenthetically, Rabbi say, I'm saying parenthetically, because the Rebbe does not say that. But let's see a very interesting word when they get to the parsha. It says here that Eliezer was asked to speak. Was given food. Vayusom lefonov leechel. They put food in front of him. And what did Eliezer say? I am not going to talk. Adim dibalti dvoroi until I speak my words. And he says, go ahead and speak. So number one, Eliezer said, before I can eat, I have to speak my words. And then what did he say? And he said, what did he say? What was his opening statement? His opening statement was, Eved Avraham Onechi. You want to know who I am? Not only that, you want to know what my Onechi is. You can say in Hebrew, ani, as we all know. But the deeper way of saying ani is anochi, like anochi Hashem Elokecha. So you want to know what is my inner being? What am I? I'm many things. I am a manager. I do many things. But you want to know what is my inner I, the real anochi? Eved Avedom. I am a servant of Avedom. In one word, Eved Avedom. I'm an Eved. I'm Avedom's servant. And the explanation goes that an Eved is the one that does not have any personal ritzenis. He doesn't want anything. The Eved wants one thing. There's nothing that he wants. There's nothing that he would like to get. He wants one thing. To do what the Odein want. To do what the master wants. That's the only thing he wants. And that's an Eved. And that's what Eliezer said. We're talking about the Kinos HaShluchim. I once heard it says in the Chumash, when Moshe Rabbeinu passed away, it says, Vayomas Shom Moshe. And the Torah is looking for one word that can capsulize, one word. Moshe Rabbeinu. You take the big Moshe Rabbeinu, the big leader, the big teacher, the big Novi, and you put him into one word. What word would that be? Vayomos Shom Moshe Eved Hashem. One word, Eved. You want to know what Moshe Rabbeinu was in one word? He was the servant of Hashem. And that answers for everything. There's a posuk in Tilim, Rabbi say. In Tilim it says, Ono Hashem ki ani avdecho. What does Ono Hashem ki ani avdecho? Someone would say, Ono Hashem, please, Almighty God, listen to what I'm asking you. Ki ani avdecho, I'm your servant. But if you check the spelling on the word Ono, it's not like Ono Hashem Ishiono. Ono Hashem Ishiono is spelled Ono, is Aleph, Nun Aleph. Ono Hashem ki ani avdecho, although it's also in Hallel, Ono Hashem is spelled Aleph Nun Hey, not Aleph Nun Aleph. And the Friedrich Rebbe says that Ono over here means where. In the previous parsha it says Ve'ono seilechi. Ono means where are you going? Reuven said Ve'ono anivo. Where am I going to find a place for myself? So Ono means where. Ono Hashem, send me any place you want. Any place you want, Ono. And any place, anywhere. Why? Ki ani avdecho. I'm a servant. A servant does not have any own ritzenes and any own wants. If he has his own wants, then he's not a shliach. Then he's not an eved. So therefore, send me any place you want. Because of the Siyumi Rambam, I went to see the Skvera Rebbe, to ask him to send somebody to the Siyumi Rambam, which he did. In the conversation, he said that he likes to tell a story about our Rebbe. What's the story he likes to tell? The story he likes to tell, he says, goes like this. That the Rebbe once asked a certain Chassid if he wants to be a shliach in a certain place. And that Chassid answered, let me think about it. So the Rebbe answered him, and he said it in his own characteristic Yiddish, Jetzt bist du nicht mein Shliach, jetzt bist du dein Shliach. No, you're not my Shliach. Now you're your own Shliach. Because if I ask you to go for Shlichus and you are answering me, you're going to think about it? That's not the answer that's needed for Shlichus. The answer for Shlichus was Hineni. I'm ready. But you didn't say that. You said you want to think about it. So the way he understood it, and he got a point. It could be that he meant a certain story, and maybe another story, but a story that I know, that I heard, that Rabbi Chodakov called a certain Jew, who was right at the beginning of the Nesius. And he asked them, a certain young man, if he wants to be a shliach in this and this place. And the young man answered, maybe it's the same story. The young man answered, let me think about it. Later, Rabbi Chodakov called him back, and he said, well, I spoke to you about shlichus. My suggestion is off. It's the same idea. Rabbi Chodakov did not call on his own. The Rebbe told him to call this and this young man and ask him about shlichus. And the Yigman, instead of saying, of course, yes, Hineni, he answered, I'm going to think about it. I heard a story from one of Ziknei Rabboni Anash that is no longer with us. I heard a story many years ago. That this was not the day of Bedikas Chometz. This is the night, a day before. This Jew was Arov. And the Frierdiker Rebbe called him in and said to him he should go to a certain town in the United States of America. And there's a certain Jew there, and he named the Jew, who is a big Baal Tzedakah. So I want you to go to him and ask him for a contribution for the institutions. It seems that the Rebbe needed the money for Pesach. So he says the story. He's Arov, and it's out of Pesach. He's selling chometz. So he didn't say he's not going. He said, "Ich will schon gefunden a teretz for the balabatim." I'm going to find a teretz for the balabatim. And when he told the story, he cried. So the Frierdiker Rebbe said immediately, "Don't go." So he started begging, "I want to go." The Rebbe said, "No, you're not going." And then he said, I didn't say I'm not going at first. I said I'm going to find a teretz for the balabatim, which means I am going, but I'll find a teretz. The Rebbe doesn't need you to find a teretz. The moment you say you want to find a teretz, and he didn't go. And when he told the story, he cried. Eliezer says, you want to know who I am? Eved Avraham Anechi. I am an Eved. I'm just repeating it. But it's a Torah Volt and a big message that everybody understands for himself. Now, the Rebbe brings, to answer this question, how come we find extensive language 2 times on the story of Eliezer and Eved Avraham? So number 1, the Rebbe says here that there is a question, what was Eliezer? Was Eliezer a shliach? Or was he a shatchen, a matchmaker? And it seems from the Sikha that the Rebbe accepts very clearly. He brings a Teisves says in Ksubas, Eliezer was a shliach. Not only that, it was before Matan Torah, there are even sforos that he was able to do kiddushin. That when he gave Rivka all the presents, that was kiddushin. So Eliezer was more than a shatchen. Eliezer was a shliach. And the Rebbe says simply many times, the shlichus of Eliezer Eved Avraham. Now, he was a shliach to do a shidduch. So because of that, everything is repeated 2 times. How do we reconcile that? How do we understand that? And the Rebbe brings from the Alter Rebbe, the Alter Rebbe says in Likutei Torah in Parshas Baruch that the shidduch of Yitzchak and Rivka is not a shidduch just between 2 people. It's an Inyan kloli. It's an Inyan hachi kloli b'Torah. It's a very, very generous because it's general, because it has to do many aspects, and it includes every single person later. And it has to do with the whole Seder Ishtalshalush, which means with the entire constellation of the world. Because Yitzchak and Rivka, it's not a shidduch between 2 people. It's a shidduch between 2 worlds. Yitzchak and Rivka were not only 2 separate people. They were 2 separate worlds. Yitzchak stood for the spiritual. Rivka stood for the mundane. Not that she herself was mundane, she was a tzaddikus. But from the place she came from, Lovon and Choron, Chadei Nav Shalelam, the wrath of the world. And it says in Chassidus, it's Kabbalistic terms, that this is a yichud, a fusion of Shem Ma and Ban. Ma is spiritual, and Ban is mundane, is physical. And what we had to bring to get together here is not just a man and a woman. We had to bring together two worlds together. The world of spirituality and the world of physicality of the mundane. Yitzchak stood for the very spiritual. And we see it. There was a hunger. So Yitzchak wanted to go to Mitzrayim. And Yitzchak said to himself, why am I better than my father? It says in Chumash, that there was a hunger in the land. So my Avram went to Mitzrayim. So I'm going to do the same. So the Rebbe said to Yitzchak specially, Al teilid Mitzrayim, do not go to Mitzrayim. Mitzrayim ain't a kedaylach, it's not for you. No, wait a minute. It's not for him. Avram went to Mitzrayim. His father went to Mitzrayim. His son Yankov went to Mitzrayim. Why can't Yitzchak go to Mitzrayim? The answer is you're an Elot Mimo. You were on the altar. You were going to be a korban. You're going to be a sacrifice. You're the epitome of spirituality. You cannot go to Mitzrayim. Avram could and Yaakov could, but you cannot go to Mitzrayim. So Yitzchak was the epitome of spirituality. An Elot Mimo. A complete sacrifice. Rivka, from where she was, the Medrash brings the pasuk, Kesheshano ben achechim, like a rose among thorns. The rose is perfect, but she's surrounded with thorns. And this is exactly what Rivka was. So she stands for the ban, which is the Kabbalistic term for the mundane, for the earthliness of this world. And she came from Sholom, the wrath of the world. So now we have to make a fusion. We have to bring together, as mentioned, not two people. We have to bring together these two worlds. And this was the shidduch of Yitzchak and Rivka. And this is why you find it two times, because this is important for the entire council, for all of Seder Ishtalshalus, and for all generations. And what's important for us to know, the Rebbe mentions this also, that in our world, what's the important things of our world, and now is the Kinus HaShluchim. The Kinus HaShluchim is exactly that. Someone is a shliach in a certain town. Now the town that he's a shliach in is not Nevel, it's not Babruisk, it's not a Chassidish town, it's not a Jewish town, it's a Gashmiyazdike town. Whether it's a town in the United States or any other place, it's a Gashmiyazdike town. And before the shliach comes, there are many people in town that do not know anything about godliness. Comes the shliach and he has to make a fusion. He has to take this earthly town, this Gashmiyazdike town, this mundane town, and transform this town into a spiritual, and bring spirituality into this town. Again, it's a shidduch of Yitzchak and Rivka. He's sent to a town that stands for the mundane, and he's asked that in this town he should bring in Yitzchak, the spirituality, which happens in every town that a shliach goes for shlichus. Moreover, this is this small world, the small picture, in the Elam Koton Zeh Odom, in the microcosm. What about the big picture, the macrocosm, in the Elam Godel? The neshama is sent down to this world. From a very, very high plateau, to a very deep pit. This pit that this world that the neshama is sent down to is the mundane. Is sometimes Mitzrayim. And what is the shlichus of the Jew, of every Jew? To bring in the spirituality into the mundane world. Again, the shidduch of Yitzchak and Rivka. So therefore, if we look at this parasha, says the Alter Rebbe, this is not a story about Yitzchak and Rivka only. This is a story about each and every single one throughout the generations, including Mashiach. And the Rebbe stresses Mashiach, it's not a fantasy that as a Mashiach is going to come and some things there's going to be some sort of an angel. Mashiach is not an angel. Mashiach is a human being. A Gashmi is a human being. A neshama in a guf. And there again there's the fusion of both. There's the guf and the neshama. Within Mashiach there's Yitzchak and Rivka. And within Shlichus there's Yitzchak and Rivka. And within each and every person there's Yitzchak and Rivka. This is how we can understand the specialty of the Shlichus, that the Shlichus was bringing together this world, and not only for the moment, forever and ever. If someone goes on Shlichus and he's Matzliach, it's because he made a fusion of Yitzchak and Rivka. Yes, if he goes to the Shliach and doesn't do anything, then that Shidduch is a separate story. But if he succeeds, and he turns around the city, and he brings in Yiddishkeit into the city, and then as the ladies know, you hear so much, the activities of the women, what they do, the greatness that they do with challah, which is an absolutely great thing. They bake challah. What can a woman do? How can she get women in her community to do something? She makes a challah session. And there's a story, Rabbi Say, that everybody tells now. That there was a Jewish woman in Beersheba, and her daughter was one of those who were captured. And the women in Beersheba invited her for a challah baking session in honor of her daughter. And she came. And right after that, her daughter was freed. So you see a tremendous thing in baking challah, which whoever thought about it, it has the greatest of rewards. And Jewish women do it constantly. Yes, there was an activity for men. What's the activity for women? Baking challah for Shabbos. And that everybody understands. And again, in that challah, Rabbi say, there is a fusion of both the Gashmis and the Ruchnius. The challah is dough, is Gashmis the dough. And what you would put in this Gashmis the dough, you put in the spirit, you put in the Yitzchak, the spirit, into the dough, and together it becomes a challah. So again, that's the fusion, and we find it in our parsha. And in the big picture, we were sent for shlichus, and the Rebbe stresses, it is indeed the kindos hashluchim, and there are those who were designated as shluchim, but that doesn't exclude everyone else. Everyone else has a great shlichus. A shlichus by the previous Rebbe that made every Jew a shliach to bring Mashiach. It's more than a rhyme. It's a fact that every Jew is a shliach to bring Mashiach. And he's going to say, me? Well, I can take care of a whole city. Maybe you can't take care of a whole city. Maybe you can't even take care of one neighborhood. Maybe you can't even take care of a block. But you have a neighbor. You have one neighbor, you have another neighbor, you have another neighbor. You can talk to them about Shabbos and about Kashrut and about Film and about Challah, about anything you want. So you can do something. You can make your own contribution. And no one is going to come to say to you later, well, you didn't do the greatest thing in the world. Do your thing. What you can do, the outreach that you can do. And if you do your thing and everyone does their thing and we all do our thing, we will take this world, this mundane world, infuse it with the spirit of Yitzchak, of spirituality, and prepare ourselves and our surroundings for the coming of Mashiach. ובעגולו דידנו, ושמחו ובטוב לבוב, ובטבע נילה וינגלו, למטו מעשור הטפוחים, ובחסד ובלחמים, ותקף, ומיד ממש.